Napoleon was struck. In this child's eyes flashing with patriotism, he said, "I have read the opinion of the whole Russian people. Enough, de vous. It's all fantasies. Tell me your other plan." "Yes, but that plan was a strong thought as well," said the prince, obviously interested. "So you ascribe that project to de vous?" "At least they discussed it together." "Of course it was a Napoleonic thought, an eagle's thought, but the other project was also a thought. It was that same famous conseil du lion, as Napoleon himself called this advice of de vous." It consisted of locking themselves in the Kremlin with the entire army, building a lot of barracks, entrenching themselves behind fortifications, positioning the cannon, killing as many horses as possible and pickling the meat, of procuring or pillaging as much bread as possible and weathering the winter, and of breaking through the Russians in the spring. This plan strongly appealed to Napoleon. We went around the walls of the Kremlin every day, and he pointed out where to demolish, where to build, where there would be a lunette, where a ravelin, where a row of blockhouses, the eye, the speed, the stroke. Everything was finally decided. De vous kept pestering him to make the final decision. Again they were alone, and I was the third. Again Napoleon paced the room, his arms crossed. I couldn't tear my eyes from his face, my heart was pounding. "I'm off," said de vous. "Where to?" asked Napoleon. "To pickle horses," said de vous. Napoleon gave a start. Destiny was being decided. "Little one," he lion's advice, said to me suddenly, "what do you think of our intentions?" To be sure, he asked me just so, as a man of the greatest mind occasionally resorts to heads or tails in the last moment. Instead of Napoleon, I turned to de vous and say, as if inspired, "You'd better go back where you came from, General." The plan was destroyed. De vous shrugged and whispered on his way out, "Bah! Il devient superstitieux." And the next day the retreat was announced. "All that is extremely interesting," the prince said terribly quietly, "if that's how it all was, that is, I mean to say," he hastened to correct himself. "Oh, Prince!" cried the general, so intoxicated by his story that he might not have been able to stop now even before the greatest imprudence, you say, it all was. But there was more, I assure you, there was much more. These are merely facts, small, political facts. But I repeat to you, I was witness to the nightly tears and groans of this great man, and no one saw it except me. Towards the end, true, he no longer wept, there were no tears, only an occasional groan, but his face seemed more and more veiled in gloom. As if eternity were already overshadowing him with its dark wing. Sometimes, at night, we spent whole hours together alone, silent. The Mameluke Ristan would be snoring in the next room, the man was a very sound sleeper. But he is faithful to me and my dynasty, Napoleon used to say of him. Once I felt terribly grieved, and he suddenly noticed tears in my eyes. He looked at me with tenderness. You pity me? He cried. You, little one, and perhaps yet another child pities me, my son, la roi de Rome + 19 the rest all hate me, all of them, and my brothers will be the first to sell me in my misfortune. I burst into sobs and rushed to him. Here he, too, could not restrain himself. We embraced each other and our tears mingled. Write a letter to the Empress Josephine, I said through my sobs. Napoleon gave a start, reflected, and said to me, You have reminded me of the third heart that loves me. Thank you, my friend. He sat down at once and wrote that letter to Josephine, which was sent off with Constant the next morning. You did a beautiful thing, said the prince. Amidst his wicked thoughts you prompted him to a kind feeling. Precisely, prince, and how beautifully you explain it, in conformity with your own heart. The general cried rapturously, and, bah! He's becoming superstitious. Plus the King of Rome. Strangely enough, real tears glistened in his eyes. Yes, Prince, that was a great spectacle. And, you know, I nearly followed him to Paris and, of course, would have shared with him the torrid prison aisle, 20 but, alas! Our fates were separated. We parted ways. He went to the torrid isle, where once at least, in a moment of terrible sorrow, he may have remembered the tears of the poor boy who embraced and forgave him in Moscow, while I was sent to the cadet corps, where I found nothing but drill, the coarseness of my comrades, and, alas! Everything went to rack and ruin. I do not want to part you from your mother and will not take you with me. He said to me on the day of the retreat, but I would like to do something for you. He was about to mount his horse. Write something in my sister's album as a souvenir, I said timidly, because he was very upset and gloomy. He went back, asked for a pen, took the album. How old is your sister? He asked me, pen in hand. 3, I replied. Petite fille alors. And he scribbled in the album. Ne mentez jamais. Napoleon, votre ami sincere. Plus. Such advice and at such a moment, you must agree, Prince. Yes, it is portentous.